You know, did you prefer the before or after?
Wicked, wicked, jungle is massive. Wicked, wicked, jungle is massive.
This video is largely going to be going into a maintenance session on this Awase Scopoline 60, originally Aquascape, now a good few months ago. Iwagumi, you can't tell it's Iwagumi at the moment, it looks more like a jungle style, but believe it or not there are 3 rocks in there and they'll be exposed later, and we'll tidy up the layout and you can see how the whole process happens. I'll talk you through it, of course.
Incredible.
And please do watch all the way to the end. I do have a special announcement and some life updates, just to give you a bit of a hint. If you do like what you see around here, you can have an opportunity to come to my home and scape with me. Stay tuned to the end and you can find out how you can do that. Brief overview of the system itself. The Awase Scopoline rimless tank, low iron glass, mitered corners, really great cabinet with loads of unique features, including magnetic tool holder, sliding drawer for the Biomaster filter, and we have the removable slots here so you can fit your hoses to your configuration. I'm using inline CO2 injection, around about 1 or 2 bubbles a second, and that's on a Strideways dual stage regulator with a manifold, so it also adds CO2 injection into the Highline 400 Aquascape. Substrate is the Awase Scaper soil with a base layer of ADA power sand. Not necessary for a substrate, but it just adds extra nutrients and some other benefits to it as well. The hoses, I've replaced the supplied Awase hoses with some 12mm clear hoses which need cleaning. There's glass inlet and outlet that needs cleaning as well. We'll do all that. The pre-filter will need cleaning. Plants obviously need trimming. We'll talk about trimming and a very kind of unique way of trimming this scape, as you'll see later. The lighting is a Life Aqua Prime Pro 600. This is a temporary light on loan from Aquarium Gardens. Eventually I'll be replacing it with either a Twin Star or Chihiros, I'm not sure yet. Deciding which one to go for. Let me know. Are you Twin Star, Chihiros fan? They're both great at growing plants and they're both great prices, so it's a tough one. Let me know what you think in the comments. It's been left growing for probably 4 or 5 weeks since I last probably did a video, and yeah, the platies have been breeding. That's been fun to watch. There's cherry shrimp are breeding in there. The plants are really healthy. There is some nuisance algae in there, which you'd expect just because the low levels of circulation now. You can see the inlets there are clogged up, so that's reduced the circulation. That can lead to potential algae issues. But overall, the whole system looks really healthy and I'm really happy with it. So without further ado, let's start maintaining. Normally what I would do is actually drop the water level down so I can work in the tank without fear of spilling stuff around, and then clean the glass. But today, I'm actually just going to start tidying up the plants. It's a complete and utter jungle at the moment.
Jungle is massive.
Nothing wrong with jungle.
Jungle is massive.
Actually quite inspiring. This is kind of inspired by Ty Streetman's kind of aqua chaos style.
Incredible.
And it's a great home for the fish. Obviously they've been breeding, the shrimp have been breeding, they're obviously very comfortable. The amount of oxygen that's being produced by all of these plants will be really beneficial for the whole system, for the bacteria, for the fish, for the shrimp, etc. Filter bacteria, substrate bacteria. So there's nothing wrong per se with having a jungle style or an overgrown style. There are, however, some limitations. Obviously there's less swimming space, there's less open space to enjoy the aesthetic. Potentially is going to be a smothering of plants, so there'll be plants that will literally be dying off because there's too much plant matter blocking the light and blocking circulation. So for that reason, it's really great to give the plants a good trim. So 2 main reasons, aesthetically and functionally. To trim, we normally use scissors. So I like to use curved wavy scissors from Tropica, but in this instance, the best tool is your fingers. And if you have any fingernails left, then these are great just for pinching the stems, and you can really make a big impact quite quickly without the need for using scissors. So let's go ahead and start pinching away, shall we? So what I'm going to do now is just kind of look at the whole layout and just think about what do I want the end result to look like. So definitely want to keep the reds in there as like a focal point. It'd be nice to have kind of like a convex layout, so like a mound layout really, so we can trim the stems to the left and the right quite harsh all the way towards the bottom and just shape it. And we'll be shaping it kind of stem by stem really. Let's start off with the Hygrophila polysperma here at the front, and just literally getting the stems in between my nail and my thumbnail and my fingertip and just pinching it off. You can use scissors if you wish. There is some thought that by pinching the stems you're kind of bruising them and this will kind of inhibit any regrowth. But in my experience with these aquatic weeds, I mean that's what most aquarium plants are, stem plants especially. They're basically weeds in nature. You know, these aren't slow growing specimen kind of plants. They're just designed to really take over and grow as rapidly and dominantly as possible in the nature. It explains why they grow so quickly in our aquariums, especially when you're adding CO2 injection and good lighting, which we have here of course. Just being mindful not to spill too much water over the top. You could always just take out 10 litres or so, 3 gallons, just to give yourself a bit more assurance that you're not going to spill. But I like to live dangerously, don't do bomb disposal anymore, so I like to get my thrills, elsewhere. You can just see here, they're actually wanting to grow out of the tank. And all of these plants actually here in this aquarium, I believe all of them in fact, all the species do grow out of water in nature. And the vast majority of aquarium plants in the hobby you will find do prefer to grow out of water. There's only a few species that actually only grow underwater, such as Vallisneria. So the plant here, this really dominant plant here, this is called Heteranthera zostifolia. Actually has quite delicate stems, and you can actually, rather than pinching, you can almost just tug it and it will just break, and that is probably arguably a better way to do it than trimming or pinching, because it's going to be a clean break and any regrowth will probably be easier. So what you might find is as you get down to the bottom layers of the plants, they might look a little bit unhealthy because they're basically starved from the light. This is why regular maintenance is a good idea. I wouldn't really usually wait a month or so between trimming plants like this, especially fast growing stem plants. This is why most of my aquascapes at home are always filled with crypts and ferns and anubias, because these are very slow growing and require relatively little maintenance. But there's something really cool, isn't there, about witnessing such fast plant growth. It's like a human condition to want to grow things, I think, especially if you're a farmer like me. Probably give some of these healthy stems away to fellow hobbyists, fellow friends. Otherwise I'll discard of them very carefully. We definitely do not want to have any of these accidentally getting into any natural water systems, because they can become invasive. Just noticed a few of the Aerocalon Vietnam leaves covered in BBA. Not really a surprise considering the low levels of circulation. There's quite a lot of die-off actually towards the bottom of this portion here. So what you could do is remove the whole thing, separate it, remove any unhealthy parts, discard of those, and then replant the healthiest parts. So the Hygrophila polysperma and the Heteranthera zostifolia, definitely the fastest growers in here. Hard to know which is the fastest, but they're both absolute brutes, but great, great for filling up a space quickly if that's what you're after. Great for helping to prevent algae, because they're growing so quickly, they're removing the nutrients that would otherwise cause algae. And I always recommend, try to have at least some fast growers, some really easy fast growing weeds in your aquascape, especially in the early stages of an aquascape's life where algae is really quite risky. yeah, it's starting to come together. Okay, we need to really sort of pay attention now to the reds, because they are, you know, dominant here. So I'm trying not to be too brutal. You can always replant, you see, replant any excess cuttings back into the soil, and that will obviously give us more density. The bottom of these stems are really, really leggy. They're almost dying off completely. The old leaf growth is actually covered in algae. Okay, that's really interesting. I'll get some close-ups of that, because that is a really good learning point there. You'll see the BBA building up on the old growth here. You'll see that there's no leaves at all at the bottom of the stems. So that doesn't look very attractive at all. You know, this is definitely a symptom of lack of light. So what I'm going to do is actually going to use scissors this time, be a bit more delicate. Trim the healthiest portions and then replant those. It's really good to get up close and personal to your tanks. It really helps you to connect with it. You know, this is a whole living system that we're dealing with here. And it's your responsibility to look after it. You know, you can only really feel connected with it if you do really observe it, get up close. Observation is such a vital part of aquascaping maintenance. It's all well and good growing in a scape really quickly using, you know, high energy methods and really top end equipment, and you're lucky if you can do that. But if you want to maintain it in the long term, you know, we're talking 6 months plus in a high-tech tank, I'd say is long term. You need to learn the long-term maintenance game, in my opinion, rather than just stripping it down and starting again. Which is all very good for, you know, satisfying that creative itch. But, you know, arguably there's a lot of creativity involved with the maintenance process, you know. After every maintenance process, it's almost a mini iteration, a mini rescape, if you like. So don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to keep a tank going. If you're struggling with certain things, then just try to learn from it. Try to solve the issue. Have a good few goes, and if you can't, then it's time to take other action, but don't give up. Offcuts are actually very short, so they're going to be hidden, most of them are going to be hidden behind the rock, so you won't maybe see some of them for a while, but that's okay, you know. That's another lesson about delayed gratification. Something that's hard to teach really, especially with short form media content like Reels and TikTok and all that malarkey. I'm going to completely remove all of the red stems. This is Ludwigia palustris, forgot to tell you that earlier. And then there's also Ludwigia repens Rubin, which is basically a bigger version, bigger leaf shape, and it's a bit more of a, not quite so chaotic in its growth form. The Ludwigia palustris super red, it tends to branch out really easily, sends out side shoots and really can take over a background quite quickly under good conditions. It's going to be one of those things where it's going to look worse before it gets better. You know, as a beginner you'd probably do this and you'd regret it, because the layout, the jungle style layout, would arguably look a lot more attractive than what we're seeing right now. But it'd be interesting to see at the end if you do prefer the old layout versus this one. The good news is that it will just grow back, probably in 2-3 weeks, get to the point where we need to trim again. The 3 stones here, the main stone here, this is called a Sanzon Irigumi, so 3 stones. I will clean the stones just to give it a bit of a... I'm going to take this out now. This is the bit that I was talking about that's got lots of die off in it, so... Okie dokie, right, it's obviously a complete mess at the moment, but it will be tidied later. Now it's time to plant our stems. Like I say, we're probably not going to see them in the short term. All the more fun when they do appear. It's, you know, it's delayed gratification, patience, process over outcome. That's what I'm trying to say. Okie dokie, let's get the stems in there. container, just a little bit of water on the bottom to stop them from drying out. Once a plant's adapted to grow underwater, it's very susceptible to drying out and it can die off quite easily, so just a top tip for you. I'll get a close-up of those two because it's interesting to see the difference side by side. So here we have the Ludwigia Super Red. You can see why it's called Super Red. And then the bigger Rupert's Reben there. Both beautiful, both easy, both fast growing. Maintenance is actually one of my favourite parts of the hobby now. It used to be creating, you know, the new scape, get excited about a new thing, like novelty factor. Definitely an ADHD thing, seeking out novelty for dopamine. But as I become more, I guess, older and, dare I say, wiser, I enjoy the process and the dedication to seeing a thing evolve over time. You know, seeing the fish grow, maybe even breed, witnessing different behaviours of the fish and the shrimps and also the plants, you know, observing the plants over. You can only really become an expert, in my opinion, on plants, aquarium plants, if you're witnessing them, observing them constantly, you know, in potentially different environments, different conditions. And yeah, I definitely am an advocate for the longer term aquascape. I think it's more in keeping with like a sustainability thing as well. You could, you know, when I talk to children especially about planted aquariums, I kind of compare it to like the planet. You know, the lamp is the sun, and then the plants are obviously like the trees and all the plants on earth that need the sun. And then at night the sun goes down, the lights switch off, the plants start respiring instead of photosynthesizing, which means instead of producing oxygen at night, they start to actually consume oxygen and produce CO2. So it's a really interesting relationship that, you know, you can teach kids a little bit of biology, a little bit of physics, a little bit of design, a little bit of delayed gratification, mindfulness, so many great lessons that you can teach kids and young people in general, and even adults, of course. You know, as I said, you're probably not going to see these now, unfortunately. I'm actually going to plant the Palustris and the Repens together, you know, kind of intermittently mixed up. I like mixing textures, it gives a more natural theme. Don't very often see like complete monoculture in nature. It's more of a human thing. Because the red plants do tend to prefer more light, and the plants in the foreground are actually quite easy, so what I can do is slide the light to the back during the growing in phase, and those red stems at the back will grow quickly and produce beautiful red pigmentation. And then over the next few weeks, all of the kind of unhealthy looking green plants will hopefully spring back into life with good CO2, good liquid fertilisers, good soil, of course, good substrate system. Basically giving the plants what they need to thrive. Most importantly, TLC, tender loving care, from us, the aquascaper, or the gardener, or the farmer, hobbyist, whatever you wish to label yourself as. So just enjoying myself now. Get in the flow state where nothing exists except you and the thing that you're doing. No care for the future or the past. Just in the present moment. That's all that really exists after all. The past and the future are just thoughts. And if it's one thing that I've learnt through lots of mindfulness practice and meditating, it's you are not your thoughts. Plants, plants, I love plants, 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 plants. I love plants so much, they make me happy. What would we do without plants? I don't think there'd be any life on this planet without plants, would there? Okay, now time to just have a tidy up. There's lots of floating matter in there which we can quite easily net off. and we can probably, yeah, tidy up this kind of chaotic mess around here. It's not very pretty, is it? Okay, so we've netted off most of the cuttings and tidied it up a little bit. We've still got distinctly, you know, higher up at this end and not quite tidy at this end. And I wanted to create, if you remember, the convex layout or like an island style layout. So what I'm going to do now is just trim quite hard. Definitely a case of it's going to look worse before it looks better. Okay, so pretty much done all the trimming for now. I'll get a view from above because it does look not so healthy. That's the problem when you've done a huge trimming session, and like I explained earlier, the underneath of the stems in particular, starved of light, don't look so healthy. But it's a optimal system, good light, good CO2, good nutrients. So the plants should come back to life relatively quickly. There is a risk of algae at this point because the whole kind of balance has shifted. There's been so much plant biomass and suddenly there's much less biomass. So do observe the aquarium for the next few days if you do a major trimming session. Hopefully with a mature filter and, like I say, an optimal system overall, which should bounce back relatively quickly. So next job will be to clean the rocks. Now I will drain some of the water down to do that, otherwise I'll end up splashing water all over the place. My cleaning brush, this is actually an ADA cleaning brush, relatively expensive, but in my experience the best brush possible that you can use for cleaning rocks. The issue with other kind of steel brushes or wire brushes is they eventually kind of wear out, whereas these bristles seem to be super hard wearing, and it's just very comfortable to hold. And who doesn't love, you know, investing in a beautiful piece of ADA toolage? I always love the way the cherry shrimp investigate the new clean rocks. Absolutely loads of them. We don't realise how many there are until they come out and explore. The rocks are clean, plants are kind of roughly shaped. Now looking at the whole composition, the foreground is a little bit too high. A lot of the plants are actually growing against the glass, doesn't really give you a sense of depth. So a very simple process to alleviate that issue is to just trim really quite hard down towards the glass. So there's hardly any plant height at the front of the glass, and then it leads up towards the rear. Now the potential issue with that is that we're trimming plants that don't actually like their leaves to be trimmed so much. Like the Eriocalon Vietnam, once you've trimmed one of those leaves, it's basically injured and it has to kind of put a lot of energy into healing it and then regrowing a new leaf. This is an issue in a less than optimal aquarium. So unless you have really good CO2, good lighting, good nutrients, the plant is likely going to really suffer, and that's going to cause algae. So this is a bit of a risky move, but you know, it's all good fun, it's all good learning, and hopefully it'll work. I have trimmed it like this beforehand, so I'm hopeful that it will work. But yeah, next job is to give it a really good trim around the foreground. I'll just talk about the foreground plants because we've not talked about those yet. There's a real mixture. We've got the Helanthium quadricostatus, Eriocalon Vietnam, there's some Helanthium tenellum green, Helanthium tenellum red, and I think that's it. Yes. So got all kind of intermittently mixed, and I just love mixing textures, similar textures. It just makes it look much more natural. So yeah, let's give it a good hard trim. I think we'll clean the glass next. Okay, my two favourite tools for cleaning glass, ADA razor and Denelay Cleanator. This is ideal for bulk cleaning of fairly easy to remove algae. The glass isn't actually that bad because there was so much plant mass in here, algae didn't stand a chance. You can actually clean the outside of the pipework here while we're here as well. All those bits that are getting sucked into the filter, they're going to get caught by the pre-filter. So I'm never worried about, you know, excess stuff going in here. That's the really great thing about these Awase Biomasters. So easy to maintain. So one of the disadvantages, I guess, to the scaper lines is the minimal silicone work. It's actually very hard to keep algae free, and you get a build-up of really, really tough green algae after a while. So you just get your toothbrush in there and give it a really good scrub. Okay, next job, cleaning the filter, hoses, the glassware and the pre-filter in the kitchen. Next thing you see is these all nice and shiny. Okay, sorry about that, I didn't have my microphone turned on for the removal of the equipment. So we'll just reverse the process. I've cleaned the pre-filter, so that goes in first. And then the pipe work, and I told you about the as a top tip, so you can put your hose brush all the way through in one go by rotating the unit here like so. Just make sure you rotate it back again to fit back to the filter. So it goes like that, and then we fit it on there like so. And we have our glassware nice and clean, so it's to the outlet first. Outlet is this one here with the diffuser fitted. And then inlet. Now there is still a bit of algae at the bottom there, but literally almost impossible to get rid of that, but it's a tiny bit, so I'm not so bothered. Okay, finally the CO2 hose back on there. Locking that. And then set your bubble rate back to what it was. Now prime the filter, because there's obviously air in it now. And what we might see is some gunk coming out of the filter, but because we'll be cleaning, we're doing a water change in a minute, so that doesn't matter. Okay, and now water change, final clean, and we're done. So what I like to do is just give a good old wave around the plants, lift up any excess detritus, and that can be part of the water change. We always do a big water change right at the end of the cleaning process, because the nature of disturbing everything, cutting the plants, disturbing the soil, you're going to be lifting a load of stuff into the water that can cause algae. So we need to dilute that with a water change basically. So this all gets siphoned into my garden directly with a long hose, and then I fill up directly with the tap from my kitchen, and then I add some Aquascape dechlorinator, obviously being careful not to suck up shrimps, etc. Okay, now time to fill up with our fresh water. So here it is, just a hose lock device straight onto the tap. Equalise the temperature with your hot and the cold there, and then halfway through the process I'll add the dechlorinator. So the really cool thing about this is it actually replaces the need for my red colander, and it's such a cool simple device. Basically you have the water coming out of these slots, and then there's an upturned kind of moulded plastic thing. I think it's 3D printed from a chap that gave some to Dave at Aquarium Gardens, so thank you to the chap. So it's just really straightforward. You can blast the water through here and it just simply gets diverted upwards so it doesn't spoil your soil and plants, etc. So a really great way, and I just put my hand there just to make sure the temperature's equalised. That's fine. You can turn the filter back on now as well. Actually very low chlorine levels at where I live, so I'm not so worried about the chlorine. So just read the instructions. This is the first graduation on there. That's it. There we go, simple as that. Lots of dechlorinators on the market, works just like all of them, but obviously Aquascape support my channel, so I choose to use Aquascape. I normally fill up to about just below where the light unit overlaps the glass, so about a centimetre, 10 millimetres, just under ½ an inch. Top tip, when it gets towards the surface, don't leave the tank and forget about it, because you'll flood your house. Trust me. We all, I guess there's a few people who have done that, including myself. Okay, final job. Just clean the glass. This is where it's all about attention to detail. You know, watermarks on any clear plastic. Obviously any watermarks on the glass. All a matter of personal taste, how much attention you pay to these sort of tasks, but in my mind, if you're doing a job, try to do it as well as you can. So this is the Awase daily fertiliser. I use this in my scapoline tanks, and I use the Tropica Specialised Nutrition in the bigger tank. Both perform pretty much the same. So this says 2 ml per day per 100 litres. I like to overdo it a little bit. So we'll put, this is 75 litres, so I'll put 3 ml in. So that will feed the plants, hopefully let them recover from their harsh trimming. I won't feed the fish just yet because they just need to settle in a bit after that big water change. So there we have the final maintained aquascape. You can definitely see it's a sands on irigumi, 3-stone irigumi now. So effectively I've transformed the aquascape from jungle style into irigumi. Do let me know what your favourite style is. You know, did you prefer the before or after? Of course, it's the midpoint is, in my mind, the optimal stage where it's grown into the point where we've got this convex layout that we talked about. You know, obviously the red stems will grow towards the surface and it will improve over time. But it's really interesting to see, isn't it, that extreme contrast in style. The shrimp are absolutely loving it. They're all exploring around. Other fish I've got in there, Otocinclus, just a few. Interesting aquascape. I'm going to keep it going at least for another month or so and then think about a rescape. So as promised at the beginning of the video, I do have some updates for you. And first update is I am opening up my home to members of the public. So if you wish, you can buy a ticket. I think at the time of filming there's 6 remaining, 10 slots available to have a 4-hour workshop here in the GFS gallery. There'll be refreshments provided, and we'll do a deep dive aquascaping workshop, talking obviously about how to aquascape, but more importantly, just a way to interact with you guys. And if you've got any real burning questions, or just to learn more about the hobby and learn more about how we can use the hobby to make ourselves feel better, that's where I'm coming from these days. So I'll leave a link in the description where you can buy tickets for the event. All the details are there, so I hope you can make it. And other updates, I am going to be rescaping the Ember Tetrascape soon, so that is going to be exciting. I think that will probably be the tank that we do scape at the workshop, obviously as a blank canvas. I will be setting up at least 2, maybe 3 nanoscapes, growing them in, giving you updates on those as they're growing, and they will be for sale once they've grown in 2 or 3 months or so. The Highline 400 still looking amazing. The angelfish have settled in perfectly. Just going to keep that going until I can't keep it going anymore. Basically, the cichlid tank's looking great, and do keep your eyes peeled for the Awase UK YouTube channel. There's some content from me and Sam, the Awase content creator, coming soon about biomass updates, the new organics food, lots of cool Awase products to talk about there. Other updates, I am going to be spending more time in the UK over the next 6 months or so. So with that in mind, I am going to advertise my services more in terms of private installations, tank makeovers, consultations. So if you have any questions, any inquiries about me coming to scape for you, do email me at info@georgefarmerstudios.com, and we can have a conversation there. So thanks for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Loved making it for you. It's great to get back in the content creation space at home again. I do love it, and yeah, not bad, eh?